Bob, it's good to have you back. Welcome.
Thanks a million. It's like coming home to a place I've been invited. Can smell the cookies in the oven.
That's great. Well, I want to catch up. It's been maybe a year or two since you've been on the podcast last time, but you've started a number of things over the last few years. You see, it's always shifting. It's always changing. It's never the same with Bob. But bring us up to date with the Oaks. You're doing, your podcast, which thank you for having me on with my beautiful wife, Tony.
Oh, we love that.
Yeah, your writers' workshops that you're doing, and you probably got like 28 other things that are occupying your time.
Yeah,
we give us an update.
Wonderfly busy, like kind of family stuff. I'm a grandpa 3 times over. I've just been that kind of funnels into the idea of having a place nearby. So we bought a 300-acre thrashed camp, and then we started working on it. And we put in a vineyard, and I don't drink wine, but it just seems so biblical. So we put in 50,000 bottles a year. Like, we didn't mess around. The thing about this wine, I found out the first year there's no grapes, the second year there's bad grapes, and the third year there's usable grapes. And then you have to put them in a barrel, evidently, for another 3 years. And I'm 62. I'm like, let's get the show on the road. I like fermenting it. I like the labels, the cork, everything except the taste. I'm like a Dr. Pepper guy. Then we started an equestrian center. We have 27 horses there, which is so fun. And there's one which is actually the great-great-granddaughter of Secretariat, and it's going to have a foal, so I'm told. So a baby horse is going to emerge from this next week. And I'm like, I've got the rubber gloves. I'm like, I want to catch that thing. We are going to bond. I have fainting goats. Have you seen those, Carey?
Have just on YouTube.
Fainting goat. Yeah. You make a noise and they tip over, kind of like Sweet Maria. So they not the goat part, but the tipping over part. But like, it's just been this really wondrous place, and the whole idea is to bring the party to me rather than me leaving everybody, because I really, since the earliest I can remember, I wanted to be a grandpa. I just don't want to miss a minute of it. So I'm just out there, I bet 4 or 5 days a week. And Love Does is still doing stuff. We're opening up in a couple weeks. We'll go to Israel and open our next 2 schools for Palestinian kids, one in Bethlehem, one in Nazareth. We've got a presence now in Uzbekistan, and to help us with our girls' school in Afghanistan. So there's some strategic reasons to be over the border, but adjacent. And we've got things in Armenia, and it's just been a really fun time. So we're staying busy. And then the thing that I think I like the most is that we're in San Quentin still. We're doing some stuff domestically. We've got food programs here in San Diego of all things. So we've got 500 Afghan families that we're able to learn from, and then maybe 100 prisoners at San Quentin that we're learning from as well. So this has been a really interesting period of time. I'm just so glad we get to catch up.
Yeah, Bob, and this is the thing that gets me. I mean, we'll talk about your new book, Undistracted, but, you say it's a book full of stories, and I want to ask you why that is in our conversation today. But I read 2 of your stories, and I'm like, okay, that's like what most people get in a lifetime if they're lucky. But it was Tuesday for you. Like, you just seem to have this voracious appetite for life, this huge curiosity and an ability. I mean, you have such a gregarious personality, such an amazing storyteller, but you're also doing some really hard work. Like some of the work that you're doing, in Afghanistan or Uzbekistan, or the work that you're doing in human rights and that kind of thing. It's fascinating to see. What drives your curiosity, that voracious appetite for life?
Yeah, I think I get a lot of direction in the things that matter the most to me, like faith and family and all that. Pretty much everything that starts with an F, except for our Ferrari. I mean, I'm not a car guy. You should see my thrash truck. So one of the things that I want to have is what everybody wants to have, which is a direction. Did you know this, Carey, just because I was curious about it, that people don't walk in straight lines unless they have something they're aiming at. So if you put a person and then you say, let's walk towards the flag on the hill or the tree on the cliff, that you have an orientation, you can walk relatively straight towards it. But if you don't, put that same person in the middle of a desert and they'll start walking in circles because one of two things happens. They're either their left leg is longer or their right leg is longer, or their stride with their left leg is different than their stride with their right. And so eventually we walk in circles. This is Romans 7. Like we just keep doing what we don't want to do, and we don't want to do what we do want to do. And like that's just, again, Tuesday for me. But this is why we're walking in circles. This is why we're back in that loop, unless you've got something you're aiming for. And so I think, to your point, curiosity is the flag in the hill. Faith is my flag on the hill. Just this idea, Hebrews 12, this idea of keeping your eyes fixed on Jesus. And the truth is, a lot of times I don't. I just get distracted. And so I wrote a book for a guy like me. I was getting teased by our buddy Ian Cron. He's like, "You're a 7. You live distracted." I'm like, "I know."
Well, it's funny when they sent me the book, the manuscript to look at, and I saw the title, I just smiled because we know each other a little bit and have spent a bit of time together, and I'm like, yeah, undistracted, like distraction, I think could be your middle name, right? Like
Yes,
you are one of the
wonderfully
most
so.
curious, like beautifully present in the moment, but there we go, something else. One of those people. So you wrote it for yourself and for distracted people like you.
If you can't find the book that you need, write the book you need. And then what you'll do is you'll learn a lot about yourself along the way. Wouldn't you say? You've written some terrific books, and then you end up like learning because you can kind of call BS on the things that aren't true. Like I could say, I wish I was that guy. I'm not that guy yet. Not yet. Maybe someday. If Ananias and Sapphira got real about it, they just got distracted by who they thought they were, and that's who they wanted to be. They weren't quite there yet. And so to just chill out, just realize where you are, get oriented to the flag on the hill, whatever you like the most, convertible Porsche, aim for that. You're just going to be bummed when you get there, but find something that's really worth aiming for, and then just aim for it and just say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my head on a swivel as I'm moving, knowing that that's my resting position is activity. That I want to I'm just looking where there are opportunities. Is there something that I can get some skin in the game on? And we have such a short period of time, me and you. I think I got you by a couple of years. I'm going to turn 63 here in a little bit.
I'll be 57. Yeah.
Yeah. So I got you by just a ounce, but we're both like chronologically.
Half a decade.
We get
it's moving closer.
4,000 weeks, give or take. More if you eat broccoli and less if you eat Pop-Tarts like me. But that's why I look like this. But to say what I'm doing is like most of the time, even if I'm eating something, it's just because I'm bored. I'm just distracted. And there's nothing like a Pop-Tart or a cake pop to deal with that, but only for a moment. Then you're still distracted again. What if you really went for the things that were more satisfying, things that were beyond me and my immediate perceived needs? To say, what does it feel like to be me? And then ask another question. What does it feel like to be someone who's around me? Husbands, I'm talking to you. Your life might be going great for you, but ask your wife, what does it feel like to be around me? Like to be married to Tigger? And Marie would say, it's distracting. I'm like, I know. I need to write a book.
So hence you've got undistracted.
Yeah. And
there's a bunch of things. Yeah.
And you only have this little bit of time to get it done. One of the things we did get at the out at the Oaks is cattle. I mean, it's hardly Yellowstone we've got going on, but much less violence. But I chased these cows around the field, and one of them got sick. It died in my arms on Friday, Carey. Literally, this 1,200-pound beautiful cow. I was just not knowing anything about cows that just got really sick from something. And there was a really nice guy. He didn't know what to say. And here I am, I got a cow in my arms and I'm just like filleted by this thing. And it breathed its last breath. And this really kind guy said, "Can I give it CPR for you?" I'm like, this guy weighs 60 pounds. This is a 1,200-pound cow. But he said, like, "Can I just jump into that with you? Can I try to do something that would help?" And I'm just telling you, that kind of what will break our distraction from our pain and for the things around it is acts of kindness. It was just this, people that are big Team Jesus, and I'm one of them, but like to just say, like, be ready to make a defense for the hope that's within you, like be Jesus's lawyer. But then they stop reading. They don't get to the part to do with kindness and respect. And so I'm telling you, all your defense is a distraction. Kindness and respect has shelf life. That will outlast you. I want to talk about that stuff. I want to do that stuff.
Those are good words. So I want to get in more into, the worthy cause. So one of the things I really admire, and you're not secretive about it because you've written about it, you've talked about it, Love Does has a lot about it, but you do some remarkable work in the area of justice and just trying to help those who maybe otherwise might not have the resources to help themselves and for equality, et cetera. But I would say, I don't know, feel free to disagree. The world seems harder and harder to get around these days, thanks to our pandemic. Politically, it's as explosive as it's been in a long time. Without revealing any secrets or, putting anyone in danger, how do you make a difference in countries where it is exceedingly difficult to make a difference? For example, Afghanistan would be one of them. Like, how is it? Because most people would say, "Oh, that's just off limits. Like, I could never do anything like that with my life." But there you are, Bob, doing it, which I find so inspiring. So what are some keys to kind of breaking through those barriers and saying, "No, we're going to do something on the ground here"?
Yeah, what immediately came to mind is these amazingly courageous men and women who are doing it. I'm like, not that guy. I'm sitting in San Diego. However, when I get a chance to be with them, which is relatively often, one of the things that I've noticed is their resolve. They just want to put books in the arms of little girls. And then the Taliban comes along and all the crazy happened and it said, all the schools are shut and you can't do that. But get this, we had our headmaster went back in this particular city in one of the biggest hotspots there. He went to the Taliban. He said, "Can our girls return to school and begin reading and learning math again?" And because he was kind and because he was respectful, he said yes. The bad guys, they're still so crooked. When they die, they're going to have to screw them into the ground. But I want us to just, if you want great advocacy, be kind and respectful. We had our girls out of school for about 3 weeks after the takeover by the Taliban. They've been back in their chair for 2.5 months. It's amazing what will happen. And, as a lawyer yourself, you just know you get a lot further with like honey than vinegar. I mean, honey wouldn't melt in my mouth. And that isn't going light on doctrine. That's going big on the power of Jesus Christ unleashed in the world through ordinary people, courageous men and women who are Afghans living in Afghanistan, doing the work, and then having other people just cheering for them. And I got the pom-poms out, but I got more than pom-poms. I'm like, what if we just take the things and find a kinder, more respectful. There's two guys that are on opposite side of a conflict right now that's unfolding that planted a tree. We spent a week together. They planted a tree together. And when all this crazy headlines started coming out, I just emailed them a picture of the tree. And I said, "I'm just giving you an update on your tree. The branches are strong. The roots are deep. Just giving you an update." Instead of feeling like you need to jump in with all the stuff that I'm ill-equipped to jump in with, one thing we could do is just help people remember who they are. Remember the agreements that they made, that we were going to be in this together, even when it gets crazy. I think that there's a place for the peacemakers. That wasn't my idea. It was somebody else. And to say, like, what if we do that instead of getting distracted on being right about who's this and that and all that, to say, I'm not an umpire, I'm a base coach. Right? I'm just saying, run your race. I'm thinking Hebrews 12 with endurance, keeping your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter in faith. But if for somebody else to just run your race, that's awesome. Run your race, man. Pick a flag that's worth running towards. Don't go in circles.
Wow. I want to get into sort of your craft of storytelling, because I'm pretty amazed by it. You know, I've read some books on distraction. This is a very different one. And I think you say in the introduction, hey, this is mostly stories with a few principles thrown in here. And we're going to talk about that. Talk about and you're fabulous at storytelling. Is that true? That's what you wrote, right?
Yeah, that's totally true. I mean, as you were reading, I'm like, that sounds like something I'd say. And then I was thinking, if you could see what's going on in the cloud bubble, you'd say, like, buddy, don't operate heavy equipment. Because I was like, that's exactly my perspective. And I'm like, wait, you're reading from the book. Yeah, that's exactly how I feel about it.
And again, it's one of those things. I'm more of the bullet point guy, so I'll think in principles. And you have more stories in one book than most people have in a lifetime, but you credit it to note taking. You say you take voracious notes, and you encourage people to do the same. You don't? Okay, tell us more. No.
I do.
Maybe I misread it.
I'm
you
just
do?
like Mr. Note Taker. Yeah. So I'll take down things that you've said. I've done it. I've listened to your podcast, and I'll go like, wow, I'm careful not to start farming what you're saying as a way to honor and respect you. I don't want to take your idea, not that it's, intellectual property, right? Just be cool.
Yeah.
Just don't farm somebody else's idea, but be inspired by that. Think, is there an adjacent idea to that? Is there something that you've said that pings something or knocks something loose for me? And I'll take notes on that, and I'll start thinking, I'll spin that puzzle piece. And the idea of storytelling, it says that's what Jesus did. It said he never spoke to anybody without telling him a story. And I love that. Yeah. I don't forget if it's Matthew 13 or 15, but it's one of those two. And what if we're that guy, like that gal, like just be the person that's always looking for that thing where I could learn a little bit more. It's the kind guy that said, "Could I give your cow CPR?" You do not want to put your lips on this nose right now. But to say, like, the capturing the moment, what it felt like, we have an excavator, and I don't know, what do you do with a 1,200-pound cow? Like, we did this big hole, and we picked him up as gently as we could and put him in the hole. And there's a little girl that is up there at the camp. She's kind of the mayor of the camp. She loves this cow. And I had to explain the cow isn't here anymore. And so we had a little service, and we said some nice words about what a great cow that cow had been. And then later that afternoon, I think she'd completely forgotten. She'd moved on. She had complete closure on the cow. And then, Carey, I realized I'm the cow. Like, oh my gosh. And I've got a bullet point for you listening. You're the cow.
Exactly.
What are we going to leave behind? To say, Bob, he was one fuzzy guy. Like, he was fun, but I want to leave a little bit behind, not because Jesus needs our efforts, because I ask him every day if I can help him out, and he keeps telling me no. What he needs is our hearts. That's his desire.
Yeah. When you keep notes, because we've talked in a previous episode about, your work in law, which you don't talk a lot about publicly, but you won a lot of cases in law. I had a very successful law practice. When you take notes, and I'm trying to connect things, and if they're not connected, let me know. But, one of the keys to being successful in court, I think, as briefly as I worked in that, is you better be prepared. You better know your case. You better know the other side's case. You better know what the judge is thinking. Notes can be very helpful. On the other hand, I think really amazing things happen to all of us, but we don't remember. And a lot of those stories in your book, are they just implanted in your memory, or have you got notes of them and it reminds you, oh, this reminds me of the time that, I jumped out of an airplane, and this reminds me of the time that Richard said this, and this reminds me of the time. I'm thinking about that because I really believe that better note-taking is important, and I just want to exegete that a little bit more.
Oh, yeah. So I have a Word document. After you get more than 400,000 words in it, it becomes cumbersome. It just, you get that spinning wheel of death on your laptop. And so I have a series of Word documents. I have 1.8 million words written down, about 5 or 6 at a time. You do the math, that's a lot of entries. Because I send myself maybe 150 emails a day. I'm like, him again, block. But it's something that happened. It's something you said. It's the cow died. It's the chicken got away. It's the guy that the roots are deep and the branches are strong. And but I'll send myself these little crib notes. And then in the next morning, I don't have a quiet time. I haven't had a quiet time in 30 years. Mine are really loud. What I'll do is I'll go like full Apostle Paul. I'll say, I want to check this against Scripture. And I say, I know it sounds right, but is it really true? Right? I did an Instagram post this morning. I was watching the clouds, like the fog clear, and it just reminded me that idea about things could get foggy. And then I was thinking about that verse in 1 Corinthians about how we see through a mirror dimly, but then face to face. And so drawing those connections to your point about note-taking, this is George Lucas. So
I was going to get there.
Isn't that great? Yeah. So he's writing Star Wars at the same time he is scoring American Graffiti, and you find a scene by roll number and dialogue number. And he said, where's the scene? And it was roll 2, dialogue 2 in American Graffiti. And he wrote down R2-D2. The rest is history. So what you're doing by capturing the note is you're spinning that puzzle piece. You've moved along and you're like off to the next thing, but that puzzle piece is still spinning. And what I hope we can do, if faith guides your steps, and it may not, but if it does guide your steps, that you'll connect that with a scripture that lets you know that's true.
Did storytelling come naturally to you as a child, or is it something you've intentionally worked on?
I feel like I was a consumer of good stories. Like I'd hear, you're a storyteller. Like you'll tell a story about something, I'll just go like, actually I can connect with that. That makes it more memorable. Like somebody tell me how many boats are floating in the Sea of Galilee. I could give a rip. I don't care. Somebody could tell me a bunch of words in Greek and the phileo and agape, and just tell me when somebody did a selfless act of love to you. I'll remember that, and you can lose all the rest. It's not that it's unimportant. It's just not important to me. What's important to me is like to get to the core of the scriptures. Like what is this thing? Galatians 5:6, the only thing that matters is faith expressed in love. I mean, like, so I get it. Now tell me, when did that happen? So when did you express? Oh, and then even more, tell me when it just blew up. I mean, you had no more eyebrows because it just blew up. That's where it gets real. If we could just talk about something relatable, then talk about something important, then take a new camera angle on it and don't resolve it. Do that over and over again, something relatable. Here's Jesus, greatest theologian to ever walk the earth. He points to 2 sheep and he says, it's like when one of those gets away. And everybody's like, oh, I hate when that happens. You know, he didn't start talking in esoteric ideas. It was just like relatable, and then say something important about it. Matthew 21, there's 2 sons. One said yes and didn't. One said no and did. Which one did what the father asked? It's like, oh man, something important. Take a new camera angle on it. Don't say things that rhyme. And if you get advice that rhymes, run. And then don't resolve it. Like there's something, if I told a story about my son and us being on the Nile, and then we get stuck in this eddy and he falls out of the boat and I look up, he's gone. But then I start talking about these eddies that we get stuck on in our life. Don't have them get back in the boat. Just go to the next chapter. And I tell you, people won't know why they're still reading. That's why they're reading, because it wasn't resolved. That's why people watch Yellowstone.
Right. It wasn't resolved.
It wasn't resolved. I feel like that's why people stopped watching Lost, because there was no plot. Nothing was resolved ever. There was no plot. You know, they plugged in the numbers. Remember, they went into something called a pelican. I think you and I are good at memorizing things. You had to put in these numbers: 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, and 42. I'm not even kidding. I don't know how many years that thing's been off the air, but what I remember about that is they didn't do it one time and nothing happened. It's like there's no plot. You know what happened, Carey? There was a lottery, and people they picked the numbers. I'm not kidding. The numbers they picked: 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, and 42. People lost their minds. But here was the thing: about 1 million people picked those numbers because they were watching Lost. Everybody got $5. So here's the point: have a plot. Don't have a slogan. Have a plot. Talk about it in relatable terms. Nobody's impressed by how many words you know in Greek. What they're impressed by is a life of sacrifice and commitment. What dazzles God is obedience. What dazzles people is shimmer. So dazzle God with obedience. When he just says love creepy people, just say wow, this is going from the farm league to the major league. And here's the crazy thing. I'm the creepy person to some people. They don't get me. Somebody asked me if I was watering down the gospel. And I said, well, I hope so. I mean, I want it for thirsty people. That's why I tell stories. I want people, because I just trust that Jesus Christ, Matthew 17, flesh and blood doesn't reveal this to you, but the Spirit of God will. So I want to say things that are true, but I'm going to let Jesus do the landing on that. It ain't going to be me.
Wow. I would love to know, because this is book number 3 for you.
Evidently.
Love does. Everybody always.
Yeah.
Undistractable. You've developed a writing process by now. How do you write books? Because it is an unusual style. As somebody who reads a lot of books, it's Bob. You don't have to look at the cover. You don't have to look at what it says at the beginning. You're 3 paragraphs in. You're okay, this can only be one person writing this book. There's a style that's emerging, Bob. Can you take us through the writing process? How does that work out of that 1.8 million word set of documents you've got?
It's really, I haven't written a book just yet. Wouldn't know how to. I've assembled books. I assemble books. I do some dumpster diving. I go into everything I've thought about everything. And then I'll go in there and I'll say, what's something that's actually interesting about that? So I'll take, this idea that we have trained responses, that there's Pavlov's dogs. Remember, the light goes on, they get a little food, and then they have these conditioned responses, and the light goes on, they start salivating. Interestingly, in the Battle of Leningrad, they ran out of food. They ate Pavlov's dogs. Kind of a saddie. I bet they didn't see that coming. But what I want to do is find something interesting and then say something important about that. Not just a way to tickle people's ears with loose doctrine. Yeah. Paul said, don't do that, but to actually engage people with their life. Don't make it about you. I try to think of using words like me, my, and I. You get the first one for free. I was, but use words like we, us, and our. Because the truth is, if you write a book and say me, my, and I a bunch of times, then it's like watching somebody else's vacation pictures. I'm glad you went to Maui. I'm not mad that you went to Maui. I just whatever. But if you make it about their trip to Maui or their trip across the street, if it's about we, us, and our, that matters. And so in the writing process, I'm constantly doing that. I try to think it's $20 every time I say the word I. Because it's actually costing us a ton. It's costing us their attention. They will become distracted. And so what about in our conversations? Philippians 2:20, I'm a Bible verse guy. People wouldn't think I'm a Bible verse guy because I don't put Bible verses in my books. Because I'm writing it for the guy at the tire store. I'm just saying, if the guy, he just doesn't go to church. He is church adjacent. He's not mad at the church. What's there to be mad about? It's a steeple, a bunch of bricks, mostly in place. He just doesn't like the people that are in the church. And so I just want to say, you know what? We're those people. Like, we're just fallible and we have all these picadillos. And so what I want to do is like make people thirsty. If I had a church, I would hang a salt lick at the end of each pew. Like, I just want people thirsty for the word of God. I want them thirsty for more meaning and more availability to one another in their faith. Like, get the salt licks out. People at your church that will blow their minds. It's like, what's up? I take a lick. It was actually unsanitary and everybody will get COVID, but you get the idea.
I get the idea. So usually in a lot of focus books are about eliminating disruptions, right? So you get into the zone, and I've written some stuff in that space too. But as you admit in the book and have said publicly numerous times, you've given your phone number now to over 1 million people. It's your real phone number. We have been on the front row together when it's rung, and you actually answer it as you. So, and I think the quote is, I'm just looking at my notes. Yeah. You're committed to being, quote, unreasonably available. Right. And so you'll take how many of those phone calls a day?
Oh, so many, like dozens and dozens. There was a woman that called 3 or 4 days ago and she said, the devil's in my bathroom. I'm like,
oh, wow.
Oh my God. I mean, like symbolic. I mean, I was thinking immediately, like, I had teenage boys too. But so I thought, well, have you told your best friend? So who's your best friend? And she said, Mary. I'm like, well, what if you give Mary a call and tell her about what you're feeling right now and what you're sensing and all that? Just say, is Mary like a truth teller? Does she talk to you? She'll speak plainly with you? And is she good at loving on you? She said she's really great at that. I'm like, oh, put down the phone, girl. Call Mary up. So that idea of kindness and respect, instead of just thinking like I don't have a way to intersect that idea. It's just a great reminder every time the phone rings. I've gotten 3 phone calls since you and I have started talking. They just pop through. And so when it goes to voicemail, which isn't often, then I have a recording. I don't have a recording where they can leave a message. I just say, here's my email address. I get 300 emails a day. I answer 300 emails a day. And there's something beautiful about that. For me, I don't know if it's any good for them, but it's terrific for me because it lets me just say, like, what's a word of encouragement? How could you give a cup of water that's cool to a person that's really thirsty right now? Thirsty enough to reach out. Would you honor that person? And I don't think Jesus came up with the idea of green rooms. I think there's, I've got some other likely candidates, but I just think whatever separates us from whatever, like, I just think we should be standing in the front door, passing out saltwater taffy. If you have like even if you do a lousy sermon, they'll remember the taffy. They'll think they met Jesus. No, they will. Yeah. They'll just go like, man, he took a moment. He expressed this genuine interest in my welfare. That Philippians 2:20 verse. If we got really good at that, what we would be is undistracted by all the trappings, undistracted for our perceived need for comfort or to be first, or you get to make up some new rules.
Do you ever have boundaries where you're like, I just need some me time or Sweet Maria time, or I'm on vacation with my kids right now? Like, how do you handle that? Or is it 24/7, you're always available?
No, I definitely have them. I don't schedule things on Fridays. So I just take Fridays, I draw a line through it. It doesn't mean I'm sitting around on Fridays. I just have lots of things going on, but I just know that nothing is scheduled. That's been super helpful. I try to keep my eye on the Sabbath. I try to just say listen, we need to unstring the bow. You know, the whole idea that if you have a wooden bow and it's always under tension, when you shoot the arrow, it's going to snap in half. And so to say, going to try to take the pressure off the bow, just take a breath for a second and just say, I'm just going to unwind. I'm trying to learn how to ride a horse. I'm not very good at it. I rode one last Friday. I'm still jiggling. But to find something where you could just unplug from the other things that are going on, find something that's just you're curious about, and then do that. Maybe like that idea, instead of going across the ocean, go across the street. maybe do a little inventory on how your neighbors are doing.
So I know I'm getting granular here, and if it's annoying, I just beg your forgiveness in advance. But I'm thinking about all the leaders listening who are like, oh, I'd love to be like Bob. I'd love to answer all the emails that come my way. So just a practical question. When you're off riding horses with Sweet Maria, with your family, with a friend, by yourself, 25 phone calls come in and 300 more emails pile up. Do you feel the pressure to get back to everyone? Or do you just answer in the moment as you're available?
Yeah. So the calls, like if you were to follow me around for 24 hours, it'd be so creepy and I'd get a restraining order. But if what I would do is you would see the phone, like a mutual friend of ours just texted. And he just said, I was just thinking about you today and I hope you're doing great. I'm like, wow, what a great, I knew what that felt like when he said that. We probably haven't spoken in 4 years, but man, that I popped to mind. I felt so like, I don't know, just cared for. And so remembering what that felt like, I'm just imagining when I say hello, that's going to blow somebody's mind. Or when they get an email back to me right away, just say, man, I'm so honored that you took a moment to write to me. And how'd the conversation with Mary go? To just take a genuine interest in things that even if you can't do it, if there's somebody that's a little angsty, kind of a little bit, people that just spatially put aside COVID, like they're just standing about 6 inches too close.
Yep.
You'd be like, dude, like you need to take a half a step back and to have a tic tac. Yeah. So people that sometimes are trying to work on their people skills, I just don't get distracted by that. I don't have to answer everybody's question. I don't know if you and the listeners as pastors or lay people do, but I mean, Jesus asked 300 questions in the 3 years of ministry. He only answered 3. Is that crazy? In 3 years.
I've never thought of that. Wow.
Yeah, a lawyer like me and you said, what's the big commandment? He's to love God with your heart, soul, and mind and love your neighbor. The second one was, will you teach us how to pray? And he said, I will, our Father. And the third one was Pilate. He said, so I hear you're the king of the Jews. And he said, yes, I am. So if somebody asks me a question I don't want to answer, I just answer a different question. Yeah.
Wow.
So why don't you just say, you don't have to swing at every pitch. If everybody says, what's your position on whatever, I'm like, I don't know, humble.
That's a good answer. You mentioned San Quentin, and this has been something you've been doing for years. So on the one hand, do you still teach at Pepperdine?
Yeah, I do. They still love me.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? 15 years. Crazy. Can you imagine me teaching at a top flight law school?
I was talking to someone today or yesterday, and they said they have a friend who graduated from Pepperdine, and you're like the favorite prof. Everybody wants to get into Bob's class. So you go from law school to San Quentin to minister with prisoners and learn from them. Why is that a really solid, regular commitment in your life?
I'm telling you, I'm not backing into this thing, Carey. I'm like perceived as this a really happy-go-lucky, like whatever. Most Enneagram 7s are. But underneath that veneer of yippee skippy is about a mile of strategy. And Jesus said in his Matthew 25, I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, I was creepy and you invited me in. I was sick and you comforted me. I was naked and you clothed me. I was in jail and you came. So like, that's it. Like you want to meet Jesus, you got to meet them. And if you're not meeting them, you ain't meeting Jesus. You're learning about Jesus, but he said, you want to find me, find them. So that's been the strategy. And when you said, I was like wordsmithing in my mind to minister, I'm the guy I'm not just being gracious. Like literally, I walk away from there saying like, there's a guy named Reggie that he's amazing. He handwrote a letter to Sweet Maria Goff and invited her to San Quentin. I can't get her to go to Taco Bell with me. Because Reggie has been in San Quentin for 22 years, he's not up for parole for another 30. So this was more than a parking ticket. He started growing his dreads when he got put in prison, they are to his ankles. Like Reggie is just this amazing guy. And the fact that he sat down and handwrote a letter to my wife, who doesn't go to a lot of places, she said, I'll go. Like I'm telling you, that's what happens when you care. I'm trying not to cuss here. When you give a genuine interest in people.
Yeah.
When you
I hear
just
where you're going.
care. Like I want to be that guy. And so seeing what they've done, and then they are able to access, there's another guy there named Chris. His problem is that he doesn't like prison food.
Okay.
He's got a bigger problem. He's in there for life. So you're either going to drop some pounds or deal with the problem. And he's figured out a way to hotwire his little cup that like he warms your coffee. So he cooks in his cell. What a bad idea. This is bringing to mind every like fiery thing where the door is shut and they can't get out. Well, I asked Chris, what's the coolest thing you've ever made? He said, I made a cheesecake in my cell. I'm like, are you kidding me? How do you make a cheesecake? And he wrote it out longhand for me. It's just right across the room. What you do is you have to there's a guy named Big Eddie that works in the mess hall. Got to get 5 sticky buns from Big Eddie. Then you tear them up, and then you need a cup of butter. So what he does is he tells all of his buddies, they take that little square of butter. They all go to his cell afterwards and drop off. It's nasty, but he's got his butter. And then he needs cream cheese. And there's the folks there that gets bagels and cream cheese. And for $1, he can buy from these guys 5 of those little cream cheese shooters. And 18 of those is 2 cups of cream cheese. Once you're all done, there's no like utensils because you'll shank somebody. So once you're done, you like mix it all together. He cooks it on his little hot plate. Prison cheesecake. His ingenuity was so inspiring to me. And I think of what are all of the things that I have available to me. And I'm just like, could I use those to make something beautiful, to figure out what it is that like is really bubbling up inside me? If that guy can make a cheesecake in a 130-year-old prison cell with one outlet that's 6 feet wide, 10 feet long, and 2 guys that weigh 240 in it, a bathroom, a sink, and everything they own, I can find a way to like help somebody. Like I can find a way forward too. So every time I go, Carey, to San Quentin, I just go and I take notes and notes and notes. You can't carry stuff in there. So I bring a pen. They'll let me do that. And I just write all over my palms. It's like having a Palm Pilot. I write all my notes and then I get out. I look like I'm tatted up because it's up my arms and all that. And on the flight home, I'll just write all the things I learned from Chris, the guy that doesn't like prison fruit, from Reggie, the guy with dreads down to his ankles. So, it's been beautiful. And we're starting a scholarship program. Isn't that awesome? We're sending these guys to college.
No way.
So they can't leave. So we're going to do the like version. No, like a bedspreads like tied together over the wall. But to say, I don't know. I just want to take a genuine interest in people. And then I'm the big winner. I understand more about my faith. I understand more about my selfishness. I understand more about my hopes and desires. And I see their ingenuity and I think, oh, gosh, like what might be possible for me?
It does seem sometimes, because I had that written down to talk to you about today, like there are 2 Bobs and you went there first. So there is the whimsical, storytelling, jovial, laughing Bob who's like, what caper are we going to get into next? And then I feel like a little less seen publicly is the deeply strategic, thoughtful Bob who, one case is doing justice around the world, empowering people around the world, has a deep strategy. Can you talk a little bit more about that side of Bob that maybe not as many people would see?
Yeah, but for a lot of you particularly that are up front like you and the people listening, I'm not, a pastor, yet the scriptures say we are, that we're priests, that we're doing that. And so that we need to be above reproach and we need to do these things. That doesn't apply to somebody else. That like the rests on you. And so then trying to be good men and women and like straight up, we adopt a persona. Like, and so people that don't know me from afar, they're like, oh, he's the happy guy. And so, but then there's sometimes I really get sad and lonely and insecure and all those things. But if I need to be Bob the happy guy all the time, then I'm just a caricature of who I'm actually denying the evidence of Jesus in me. Like Paul talked about that, like people who like act a certain way, but they deny the power of God in their lives. And so I just want to keep it super real, keep it authentic, and to just, so part of it is knowing where you're at. And so that's the more contemplative. I wear a mood ring, like, right? $4
yeah, I remember
on Etsy.
those.
Yeah. So I wear it. Right now it's kind of turquoise. And if Sweet Maria doesn't ask me where I am, she asks me how I am. And so we'll talk about like, why is it turquoise? And be like, oh, that's what it looks like when you talk to a great friend from Canada, a guy who, and I'm not blowing sunshine at you, I just respect you. I see the good. You could be running a small country, but instead what you're doing is loving people in the church, encouraging leaders. I just go, that's what turquoise looks like. So if we could just be in touch with how we're feeling, and I'm not saying enveloped or wrapped around the axle with that, but just to be generally aware, and then just know the stories that you've told yourself. Like, what are the things that made up little Bobby Goff? Would your first guess be that I'm super insecure?
No.
Yeah, I'm super insecure.
Are you really, Bob?
Yeah, super insecure. Little Bobby Goff, when he was 8 years old, didn't have, nor did any of us, the tools to deal with like what was happening around me. And so I made up a story to understand a world I wasn't equipped to deal with. And my story was that everybody's going to leave me. Everyone will leave. Wow. I will be all alone. And so little Bobby Goff, like that is what we do. But then what happens is you make rules around the story that you made up to understand your life. What's the rule you make? Well, I'm not going deep with anybody. Why? Well, because the story, everybody's going to leave me. Why go deep? Like they're gone. And so now you're 30 and you don't know anybody. You then manifest, like you start doing stuff. What I decided to be funny. If I kept it funny, I wouldn't have to go deep. So can you see when you start understanding, and not just for me, but like pastors, I'm talking to you, lay people, I'm talking to you, pastors. Like, I want to say, like, what's the story? What's the rule you made up? It was great scaffolding at 8 years old, but it started to imprison you. It walled you in by the time you got to your age right now. And if we can go back and ask, like go back to the scene of the crime, the little chalk outline of little Bobby Goff, and he was trying to understand this world, and they say, like, what did it feel like to be him for a second? I'm not saying, I'm no psychologist, but like, think about that. Little Bobby came up with this thing, and then he made a rule, and is that rule serving me any longer? And was the story true? And if we're actually new creations, can we say, maybe the story was true at one time, maybe not, but it ain't true now. And to say this rule, like it may have helped me at one time to get past a snag in my life, but it doesn't need to continue to be a rule in my life. If you're picking a jury, what you do, you get a couple times to kick people off the jury. And you say, I'd like to thank and excuse juror number 4, just because they looked at you weird or whatever it is. What I want you to do is think about the story, think about the rule, and I want you to thank and excuse the rule. I want you to say, thank you, rule, like you play this important role in guarding my heart. Proverbs 4:23. You had like played a really important role at one time, but I don't need that rule anymore. Story, thank you. I want to thank you and excuse you. You just don't need to be the story in my life, but you were really, really helpful. Thank you. You caused me some problems too, but pushing ahead from those, I just need you to have a seat, and you don't get the microphone anymore. That's what new creation people do.
When did you come to that realization? Like, how did that happen for you in your life? Because I think that's such a good insight that these stories don't serve us anymore, and that we don't have to be. Insecurity's been a journey for me as well, Bob. So
Yeah.
how did that happen for you?
Yeah, I think it was, I couldn't tell you what day of the week it was, but it was definitely in college. And it was when I realized I'm not my dad. And my dad's terrific, like great guy, but I ain't him and he ain't me. He would suck at being me, and I would similarly suck at being him. So I just need to say, like I'm just gonna go be me with all of my little wonky picadillos, all the after effects of a bunch of stories that I made up to deal with my complicated life and failures and all of that, and to say, okay, so can I just like peel it back and just say, what am I feeling? What is that connected to? Like to just say, what is that? If you pull on that thread, what comes up? If you went catfish fishing, which wouldn't be my first instinct, but like if something bent over on the rod, I'd reel it in and to say, is it a bass or a boot? Like,
Right.
And if it's a boot, some people just throw the boot back in and say, well, I guess they are biting today. I'd get the boot off the hook. That's the thing that I think this new creation mindset would do. Thinking about the idea of distraction, it's just keep catching the same boot. To say like, no, I actually need to use a little different technique, new bait, move up or down the river a little bit, but to change something. So that you don't keep ending up at the same place. You don't coming full circle. You don't keep walking in circles. That you've got a flag on a hill. You've got a thing. I'm not saying a slogan that you're moving towards, but to have some real purpose. I just go like, that will outlast me. I'm not going to go full cow on that. I'm going to go like, that's actually going to outlast me. I will be remembered for my love. I'll be known for my opinions. I don't want to be the guy I don't want people to meet my opinions. I want them to meet Jesus Christ. And the way to do that is for me to get a little bit more real. And it takes some courage that oftentimes I'm not able to access. But the odd time that I do, I'm really glad I did.
On the subject of insecurities, one of the things you wrote, and I think it's a quote, you say that cynics wear their insecurities on their sleeves. Can you explain that? What do you observe?
There's cynics. They're just such an interesting posse of people. They can be distracting for many of us, but it's only the newer version of the cynics that's distracting. The old school cynics were actually awesome. You and I don't think you're a cynic, are you?
I tend to be an optimist. Yeah.
Yeah. So like old school cynics, you and I would want to hang out with them. There's a guy that actually began cynicism. His name was Diogenes. And get this,
you're
Carey,
talking about Greek cynics.
Yeah, he lived in a jar. It was a big jar, but he lived in this jar. And he would walk through Athens every day at high noon with a lantern lit. And people would ask, like, why do you have this lantern? He said, I'm looking for virtue. And I'm like, cynics lived apart from everybody. They made their own clothes. They were looking for virtue. New school cynics, they're like, oh, Southwest Airlines. Like pick the flavor of the day that they're like rolling their eyes and saying something snarky. I want to go old school cynic. I want to look for virtue. But the new school cynics, their introductory greeting is, about they're just insecure. They're like me. I cover my insecurity by being funny. They cover their insecurity by being cynical. And I think I want people to that can be a big distraction for the people around you. I want to greet people with this whole idea of what's possible or the thing you learned today. Or I just would come home, and it seems corny to say it this way, but each around the table, we say, what did you learn today? And to ask those questions of each other and to just be curious about stuff. Get a magnifying glass out. You don't need to burn ants. It's actually really uncool. But to just say, I looked closely at something today, and this is what I saw. Give these to your kids. Give them magnifying glasses. Before dinner or before dessert, I want you to go look closely at one thing and come back and tell me what you saw. And just like that, they'll remember that. That will outlast you, cow. It will. I'm not calling you a cow. I'm just using this metaphor. But
I
like,
get it.
it's like, that's gonna be, my dad was so nuts. He used to, my mom was so, the thing I remember the most, it's always those really endearing things. So I want you to do this test, pastors and friends. I want you to take away what you're known for, and whatever's left is who you are. So take away Carey, the leadership guy and the pastor and the lawyer and all. Take away the stuff that you're known for, and whatever's left is who you are. Take away Bob the lawyer, then maybe have Bob the author. Take away Bob the author. What do you got left? And I just like, it's such a good vetting to say.
It is a great vetting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You tell an amazing story about all access passes and being given tickets to this concert. And I don't want to blow the story. You'll tell it well. But it really got me thinking about self-limiting beliefs that we can do more, we can accomplish more. And not even in like, oh, look at me, look at my resume. I'm talking about like what you're saying, after Afghanistan gets taken over by the Taliban and the US leaves, it's like, well, let's just go and ask the Taliban whether these women can study. And he says, sure. Like most of us would have just checked out and said, well, this is impossible. Time to go, pack up, go home, and so on. And so can you talk about the idea of all access passes and needing to get rid of the self-limitations?
Yeah, sometimes you think you need permission to do something you already have permission to do. So this idea that like, would it be okay if, and we have all these people where Jesus already, I want to do this Jedi thing and just tell people, you've got permission. You don't have permission to knock off a liquor store, but you have permission to do beautiful, unreasonable things in the world. You have permission to be misunderstood. I mean, they killed Jesus. What's a bad day for you? To say like, you have permission to, I'm not trying to build consensus. I want to build a kingdom. It's, there's a bunch of women that are asking dudes for permission. If you got something to say it. Do it with kindness and gentleness, and men as well, but be like, stop asking for permission to speak. You got something to say, let's get it out there. Otherwise, we're like muting the best 50% of what's going on. And so I want to like free up this idea of saying that like, we've got this Oliver Twist kind of thing to say, can I just have one more scoop full of gruel? And to say like, this is a God of the heavens that said, I am just giving you like your beautiful 4,000 weeks of life, give or take. And then I want you to do beautiful things. I've given you some great things: hungry, thirsty, sick, strange, naked, jail, James, widows and orphans. Like, you pick, but stop saying I'm looking for a plan. I want to find God's plan for my life. I've just told you the plan for your life. There it is. John 6:29, the disciples are saying like, so what's our work? Fair question. And he says, your work is to believe in the one God sent. Yeah. End. Like, I just want us to just say, our work is that. Eyes fixed on Jesus. Get that flag on the hill. Continue to move in that direction. And then as God brings these opportunities, our neighbors, hurting people around us, if you've got an opportunity and it crosses with an ambition of yours, but like, that's the corner you want to be standing on. And then don't just stand there. Do something. Not because you need to help baby Jesus out. Read Revelations. He's out of the crib. Like, do it because this is how you activate your faith. This is how you own your faith, right? It's not just learning about. That's what stalkers do. They learn about people that they don't know. What I want to do is actually do something with somebody and get to know them. And then what you end up with is a friend. And like, that'll actually outlast you. Go do that. You'll have your tight core. How many people are in your tight core, Carey? Like, it's just like, how many people are like, you have many acquaintances, tens of thousands. Many acquaintances,
but there's probably 5 to 10 in my tight core.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Really,
so just
who know everything. Yeah.
Yeah, why not like if you're listening, send a text. Don't agree with me. Let's take agreeing with Carey. I agree with a lot of things he has to say, but just take agreeing off the list. And then what's yours left is either do it or don't do it. Send somebody a text message to say, I was talking to a friend or listening to somebody talk, and there's about 5 people, maybe 7 that are my world. and you're one of them. And I just want to thank you. I'm telling you, you want to talk about what makes somebody's day? That ain't blowing sunshine. That's speaking the truth. And if we could do that, like, people will find their faith again. They'll find their hope again. You lose your keys, you say, where was the last place I saw those things? And if you've lost your hope, if you're listening to the podcast and you feel like, I'm just a caricature of who I've become, to say, when did you feel authentic? Hey, let's go back there. When did you feel truly loved? When did you feel understood? Let's go back there. And then just say, what was the story that happened? Well, here's the crime scene. And we don't need to camp there. A setback isn't a campsite. It was a setback. And so to say, okay, it happened. And where do we go from here? And I just think that's where beautiful. If you need a counselor, get one. I thought counseling was a bad idea until I got some counseling. Right?
Same.
I thought that Trigger was the name of the Lone Ranger's horse. More to it.
Oh, Bob, it's never dull. It's always stimulating. And you always make me think, wow, there is so much more, which is wonderful. If there was anything else you want to share with leaders, what would it be? Anything else come to mind that you just want to encourage people with or challenge people with, or as we wrap up?
Yeah, you know what? You can be right and you can be kind. There's something about that. Sometimes we hear somebody, their theology is off, or you disagree with something. And maybe if your instinct is this is Gettysburg, I'm just saying as a friend, buddy, pull on that, because that's tied to something pretty weird. You should, I'm just saying, just see what's that connected to. Why do I have that? Because Jesus doesn't need your help. The gospel is just fine, and Jesus is the gospel. And so what I want to do is to say, what's that connected to? And so I want to, that idea of kindness and respect in these really difficult times. If you could see what's in my thought bubble, there's all kinds of things going on. I leave them in my thought bubble. And so when somebody says something lame, I just be kind of just say, I just got out of the thought bubble. I know if they have any friends, they will wish that they did less of that. But just be kind. You don't have to say, well, I'm going to teach him. This is Gettysburg. I don't want to go to that. And you and I win arguments for a living. That's what we get paid to do. But I just want to replace one thing, Pavlov's dog, this conditioned response that I got to stick up for something, to say, know what you believe, know why you believe, and then do something about it. But getting in somebody's grill about it is the lowest form of doing something about it. Holding somebody's hand, sitting through them as they're on this journey, understanding that God might be doing something different in their life than he happens to be doing in your life right now. Let him get there. Quit putting it in the microwave. God's got it in the crock pot. It's going to take a while.
Oh, great words. So the book is called Undistracted. It's available everywhere books can be sold. And you're pretty active where online these days? You show up on Instagram a lot.
Yeah, I pop in and out of there. I'll think of something to say, and that might be, a collective, kind of like Stone Soup. You just throw in what you've got. So I'll throw a couple carrots in there every once in a while. So just Bob Goff. As is my email, a very cryptic email, bobgoff@bobgoff. See what I did there?
I see what you did. Oh, Bob, it's been a delight as always. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, great talking to you, buddy.
Thanks for watching the Carey Nieuwhof Leadership Podcast on YouTube. So glad you tuned in. I hope it helps you thrive in life and leadership. And if you haven't checked it out yet, head on over to the Art of Leadership Academy. In that, I give you everything you need to lead, run, and grow a church. We'll see you next time.